This week in comic books, Danny DeVito takes his shot at making a comic book, writing a comic book. And man, I really wish he had. I really wish he didn't. Oh my God. It was. Over in the land of Marvel, Fantastic Four teaches us context and how important context is and how it kind of makes, even in the worst situations, it can make things just as worse. Also, in the land of independence, oh my lord, independence this week, we're on point. Um, I got more independence than I did from the other two, that's for sure. And I want to talk to you about them right after this intro. Hey, what's going on, you wonderful weirdos? I'm Pocan Joe, and as always, you're super, super cool for coming by, and happy holidays. If this is your first time to the channel, I'm a middle-aged man. I read a bunch of comic books, and I regurgitate the more interesting things, or the things that I really hated in them, and I give them back to you. And I take notes. That makes it official. Just saying. All right, so let's jump right into it. Talking about official. Gotham City violence. Now, if you've seen me anywhere, you know that I am passionate towards the villains. And I expect villains to do villainous things, right? Call me two-dimensional, but it's kind of in their name, right? It's like a peanut butter and jelly sandwich. The recipe's in the title, right? They're villains, villainess. You don't get that in here. You get a bunch of characters that are redefining themselves, like Killer Moth, who's like, I'll just be the parasite and clean up after all the thieves after Batman beats him up. Or Penguin and Catwoman living some great life together, like running off. That was written by Danny DeVito. Also, this whole follow the science thing. Science can disagree. There can be two sides of science, right? You know, what you should say is follow the science that I follow. That was God. This is horribly, horribly done, and I can't think of a redeeming quality of any of the stories in here. Like even the chess one, right? Where Ra's al Ghul and Batman are kind of playing chess, right? And I was like, oh, chess. A lot of metaphors he's using in chess. All they did was define all the different metaphors that can be used in chess, and I was like, oh, you let me down on that one. So unfortunately, I'm not digging that book this week. Fear State, Omega. So, Fear State's coming to its conclusion, or that story arc is anyway. And Batman is going to escort Scarecrow off. So now we're getting kind of the launch story of where everything else is going to be taking off in this story. We get Peacemaker. He's down in the sewers with a sword hand now. I'm cool with that. Um, but I don't know. Ghost Killer, apparently. Yeah, Ghost Killers and Clown Hunter are going to be like a Batman and Robin kind of thing. Like, they're going to team up finally. Um, and which is weird because Ghost Killer's a psychopath. And that was like confirmed in his own story, right? So dumping a kid off on a psychopath is kind of okay. We'll let that one go. All in all, I thought the book was okay. I didn't find it to be. It just wrapped up a story in a nice, neat bow for everybody. So I don't think there was anything really hard hitting in there. However, Detective Comics, lots of Batman. If you love Batman, this was your week, no doubt, as Arkham Rises. So we're getting a new Arkham, right? And we're going to redefine healthcare, or mental health care, I should say. And I'm almost on board with that. The problem I have with this book is there's no doubt we should always progress in mental health and doing better. But to criticize the way something is today, the way Nightwing did in it, right, and not have an answer, doesn't make you the smartest person in the room. It makes you the most annoying person in the room. Stating obvious problems in a current system or situation without something to add to it doesn't provide you with anything. We all know what the problems are, and there are legitimately hardworking people that are trying to change that. I stress this because in the book they kept trying to make it a point. Locked up in cages. I don't know if you've ever been to a mental health facility before, or even like an addiction house or anything like that. It's even for the criminally insane. It's not the way he's describing it in here, and I don't think that's fair. So if the writer is criticizing healthcare and how we take care of it today, he's taking it from a stance of ignorance, unfortunately. However, I do agree with the obvious problem they say, and we should always progress in that case too. So I found that to be interesting. I would read more of this just to see where it goes. Also, you get a couple of first appearances in here of a particular character, the Mangler Man, and the Forgotten, the leader of the Forgotten, who's unnamed. You can kind of take a guess from the story who it is. But basically, in this story, we find out that Bruce Wayne is, his parents' death wasn't the first time he's seen tragic things in front of him before. So, all in all, I would give the book an okay, too. But again, if somebody's criticizing the way healthcare is today with no, I don't know, answer or suggestion or opportunity, then it's really just an ignorance based argument. Next, Venom number 2. So basically, we're telling a Jesus story in here. If you're not aware what a Jesus story is, it's a type of archetype where the father is omniscient to some degree, a god like Venom in here, right? And then the weight of all the issues that are going on are dumped onto the son to figure out. And we get introduced to a new character in here as well, Archer Lay, I believe. She's a reporter. What is it with reporters now? Like, I'm not saying that's a hard job. I'm not saying it's or I'm not denouncing it in any way, but like every other comic book now has a reporter, whether it's Superboy's love interest here, of course Lois Lane, right? That's always a thing. But like reporters or Devereaux in the Batman comic book, yeah, it's just a lot of reporters out there now. So the point of this is the sun's weight of the world falls onto the sun, and the sun has to go find this lady, who one could argue would be the mother archetype in the story. We'll find out. We didn't really get that much information. And of course, government, corrupt politicians are going to be chasing him down because they got a problem with symbiotes, right? I like this. It's a good example of abuse of power and a Jesus archetype type story, or the Holy Son type of story. Does have its interesting parts to it, but let's be honest, it needs to have a little more action in it. And I hate this dog and cat symbiote thing. Like, just I don't know what that's all about. Okay, moving on. DC. Oh wow, I did have another DC book. They got out of order. I'm sorry. Teen Titans Academy. New students, right, or possible new recruitments, if you will, for school, come into the mix. Red X just basically blurts out, "Hey, you join this team, you're pretty much gonna die, like the kid on the statue." But aha. A bunch of the students take the H dial for dial H for hero. That dial, hook it up with some woo woo, and they bring Roy Harper back from the dead, the statue at the beginning. And possibly a few other characters that we kind of saw in the background. The weird thing is that the H dial taps into like the hero verse type of thing, right? There's a whole mythos behind it. It's actually quite interesting concept. But it never took any known characters and brought them in. So I thought that was a little odd, but again, woo woo was used. So yeah, that was a pretty cool cover. I enjoyed that cover. Okay, Fantastic Four. So like I said in the beginning, this, right, context is everything. And if a situation has a certain amount of context to it, simply leaving it out will always make it sound like the worst case scenario. So in here, what we get is this Bentley 23 character. He's a clone of the Wizard. Wizard's a villain, obviously. And they have a special child custody battle in a superhero court. And of course, the Fantastic Four is there, the whole 9 yards. Dragon Man's there because that's who's his current guardian is. It was interesting because the way the Wizard broke everything down to talk about how you put this kid's life in danger, even though he's like super powered and can do things, he was doing it for whatever the superhero arc that I carried at that time. But taking out the context of it, you're basically talking about a child at the end of the day. How does that work? And I thought it was very crafty, the writing in this. I thought it was very cool. You may think it's easy to tell a story, take the context out of it, so it sounds like the worst thing ever. But there's actually some skill behind that, and the writer did a good job. Slott, yeah, it's Dan Slott. He knows how to write that kind of stuff. So yeah, that was super cool. So now I'm super excited because my indies came out this week, and we got some good indies this week. Animal Castle. Now, the solicitation and people have already said, I know, it's basically an animal farm. This is a castle this time. No, this is a lot more sophisticated than Animal Farm was. I'll give it that. We're not taking just a ruling class in this. We're actually taking a monarchy at this point, right? So we're assuming that whatever that is, that's going to be in the story at some point. This ox-looking thing, or bull, or whatever, hairy bull. I don't know. But I particularly liked this because it does something that is unfortunately has happened in history throughout the world, right? Starve the people, make sure your military's fed and strong, check. Make people feel have fear over a recurring threat. And it's very important that it's recurring. That's why I like the fact that they use like a wolves, these kind of savage things that keep coming back and keep coming back. Because if the people fear that, then they don't mind, and you suppress people that way. I also particularly like the male rabbit in here that is engaging with all the female rabbits in here. Um, because that's very common in war-torn countries. This is going to sound bad, right? But look, if your life is crap and there's nothing going on, right? There is one thing that can go on, right? And it's so weird. But generally the poorer the country is, the more children that there are. It's a very common thing. Um, that sounds horrible, but I mean, it's the situation, and I thought that displayed that very well in here. You get this kind of the secret nymph or nymph in here. Nim, is that it for the little rats? Because we got a single cat. Her husband's died. She's got to like drag bricks and all this other stuff. The people are constantly being working to fortify. But what they're ultimately doing is building their own jail, really, so they can't ever be liberated, right? It's brilliant, and if you like the Stray Dogs art style that they had in Stray, you're gonna love this. Like, this is right up your alley. So yeah, this was good. I enjoyed this. I could talk about this for quite a bit, but I don't want to speculate on it. Next, again, King of Spies. This was good. And I've talked about this type of archetype story before, where the once dangerous man, right, is getting to retirement, and you get that last hurrah. This takes that to the extreme. This is a mix of like James Bond and John Wick, kind of all rolled into one, and you kind of get this Clint Eastwood vibe from it, from an English guy. It's brilliant, and he knows he's gonna die, and he doesn't feel like all the stuff he did never really changed the world, even though it's all real high profile stuff. So what is it? One of my favorite saying is, "Oh, men of danger often regret their danger." Right. So even as he's getting older, he's looking back at his life, and even though he did all this stuff and it was dangerous and riddled his body, he's actually seeing regret towards it now. So it's so good. I enjoyed this. It was great. Department of Truth. So again, this one knocked it out of the park for me. I know a lot of people have been kind of fading off of this now, as we're getting up to, what is this, issue 14, right? And a lot of people are kind of fading off, but we kind of get the origin story of Hawk in here, if you remember the character Hawk. We also get a lot of glimpses into various forms of conspiracy in this one, right? So the whole thing with L. Ron Hubbard and Pearson, that's actually a thing. They lived together and kind of practiced an occultism that was invented by Aleister Crowley, who was a real character in history, and who worked for the British Army to combat this whole Third Reich of the occultists in that area too. Once they got the intel on it, that's an actual historical fact too. There's been reports of men in black that have no eyebrows and that are bald, and the sheer fact that they hinted to that and kind of tongue in cheek that that was funny as well. Um, so yeah, a lot of what they're saying in here is weird, but the circumstances and context, right, is taken out of its context and added new context, is probably why what intrigues me the most about this. And also the timeline in here. I never thought about this either. That's a helicopter. They're training over at the airfield. But anyway, the timeline of all these different conspiracies when they kind of happened, it was on point too. I went ahead and looked that up online, and I was like, oh. So yeah, the Babylon Lady. We got a name for her now. All right. Next, the Me You Love in the Dark. I know I should like this ending, and I know a lot of people probably did, but I still have a lot of questions. This story did not satisfy me. I still have no idea if this thing was a ghost, what its deal was, why was it important that somebody stayed in the house, or was it just an entire metaphor for an abusive relationship? Which, if somebody was like, yeah, that's the point. Okay, got it. Got it. I can do that. Somebody hiding in the dark because they're dark intentions. Like I can roll down that maybe you, the reader, are supposed to figure that out. I'll buy that too. Um, but I'm not saying this let me down in any way. I thought it was with a little twist at the end with the painting. I'm not going to spoil it for you, but maybe something in the future. I hope. I don't know. We'll see. Next, Once and Future, hottest issue of Once and Future yet. If you're still reading this, good on you. It hits and it misses and hits and it misses. But man, when it hits so well. And in this one, we find out that Shakespeare was one of these hunters like Granny in it. And he's got a little armory, which is mostly storytelling, because this whole thing's based in storytelling. We get introduced to another Athenian type character from France, who's extremely interesting character. He was used in poems and stuff like that. So Athenian stories about King Arthur and all that, always have these kind of like side things where like poems and music and other stories were kind of branched off from it from various writers. There weren't no copyrights back then. Pretty much do whatever you wanted. So the whole Camelot and King Arthur thing and the spin-offs from it covered all through Europe, all the way up into the Scandinavian countries. So I like how they're kind of dipping into some of these kind of not maybe so known stories. And also we get a quick glimpse of our favorite giant, Mr. Fee Fi Fo Fum himself. Yeah, that's right, that giant's in here, and he says those words, which was just brilliant. Definitely. And of course the witty banter with Grandma, Son, the whole 9 yards. I thought it was really great. All right, guys, that is my haul. What is going on? I've been catching Hawkeye. Not very happy with the way that they presented the swordsman in it. Like everybody else got an update except for the swordsman. He had to be the cheesy, campy one. It was like, really? Whatever. I'm not going to get into it. What else? Oh, Tiger King 2. Been watching that. I love me a shit show. I legitimately love me a shit, and that is a shit show. Just so much trailer park drama. And again, I'm not making fun of trailer parks, but if you live in a trailer park, you know what I'm talking about. Like, oh my god, it's a mess. Also, C2E2 is coming up. Boom. I'm probably going to be putting out a video here soon where we're going to launch out kind of a little parody video for C2E2. And also, if you haven't checked out Evil Air Projects and Builds, my other YouTube channel, I just finished up the Rocketeer helmet for Mr. Geek Spot himself. I'll put his link in the description below. Apparently, I got a text message just a little bit ago that he just got it. So, super happy. And because it wasn't my best build ever, I put a little surprise in there for the kids and try to win some goodwill so they'll say nice things about me online instead of, that old dude's garbage. It's actually the kid over there. All right, guys, I got nothing else. I got to get out of here. I got to get this edited, and then I think I'm going to start drinking. All right, guys, talk to you all later. Bye.